So, Scott, in the world of ghosts, where would the ghosts have come from? Might they have come from hell?
They could have come from hell, which is the next film we're going to talk about. We're almost getting good at this. Yes, From Hell. This is an adaptation of an Alan Moore joint who didn't like it. I'm as shocked as you are. Although, to be fair, he's on much more defensible ground with that opinion compared to some of the other adaptations. So Death stalks the streets of Whitechapel with Jack the Ripper.
Let's go back to the idea of Death stalking the sheeps. It's a shepherd-based horror movie.
Yes, it's basically about mutton. Death stalks the streets of Whitechapel with Jack the Ripper cutting people up. Tasked with stopping the chaos is the salt of the earth working class Inspector Aberline, played here by Johnny Depp, assisted by the rest of London's finest, including Robbie Coltrane's Sergeant Godley. While investigating the friends of the bebutchered deceased ladies of negotiable affection, he meets Heather Graham's Mary Kelly, archetypical feisty hooker with a heart of gold, and naturally the film's love interest. And so it goes, being essentially a police procedural, but with a lead detective that occasionally visits opium dens and has weird visions of the future while strung out on horse. The trail leads him to the upper echelons of Victorian London, causing frictions with his commander as Aberline uncovers evidence of this being part of a high-level conspiracy and not some commoner garden serial killer. Ultimately, the only remarkable thing about From Hell is how unremarkable it is. Most of the bad isn't all that bad, and it is generally balanced out by the good, which unfortunately is also not all that good. For example, there's a solid and interesting narrative running through it, although it's ultimately preposterous. The supporting cast is very good indeed, but balanced out by one of those mid-career Depp turns that's closer to an early career Depp turn, and an accent that's out of this world, or at least well outside of the Bowbells. The same, to a lesser extent, can be said about Graham, and the net effect being that I find it a little difficult to take this film's leads particularly seriously. The supporting cast, Coltrane, and all of the Ians, Holm, McNeice and Richardson, fare better, but they're sadly not much more than cameos. It's by no means an awful film, but aside from a feint at something of a Jekyll and Hyde-esque look at the conflict between someone's violent and phlegmatic natures in the endgame, which is explored much less, well, stupidly, in two films coming up, it turns out there's just not an awful lot in From Hell to recommend that you dredge it out of the archives. Certainly the least interesting of the Moore adaptations that I've seen. At least The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen had the decency to be a flaming car crash of a film. This is just pretty mediocre.
So I had to I was just pausing there for a moment. I was like, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? What did that? Oh, right, no, that's The League of Gentlemen I'm thinking of with the giraffe seaman. No.
Yes.
I know Alan Moore's a bit weird, but I don't think he was that kind of weird.
Yes.
Yeah, this film is just meh. It's bad, but it's not the sort of bad worth getting bothered about.
Yeah.
First of all, special anti-plaudits for not having more of Ian Richardson, because if you have Ian Richardson, you basically want to have him as much for the film as you can, because he's fantastic.
Yes.
So I don't remember what about the sort of mystery of Jack the Ripper at the time of when I watched the first time, if I realised, but this time I'm thinking I must have done, because there's supposed to be a mysterious thing about who Jack the Ripper is. Yeah, but it sounds exactly like Ian Holm. Even this, knowing from a previous viewing that it was Ian Holm, it's like, well, no, that's exactly like Ian Holm. I know Ian Holm's voice really well. I've watched Alien about 1,000 times,
Yeah, I hadn't seen this before, but I mean, even if it didn't sound exactly like the same, it's like, conservation of characters, there's not really much other candidates for it.
But then it's got, I don't know, it's trying to do police procedural stuff, but not very well. Because he's a rotten detective, Johnny Depp.
Yes.
And he gets told, well, the person must be right-handed. And this is obviously to make you not think about Ian Holm, who somehow got an actual stroke that he can shake off.
Yes.
Because you see, he can't move his right hand, it can't be him.
It's because of the power of evil, that's why his eyes turn black when he starts talking about murdering people.
Yeah, that's a weird visual conceit, isn't it? It's really fixed. It's not, apart from the visions, it's not really supernatural, but that's tending that way. But he says, it's got to be really handy because the person's throat was cut off from left to right. Surely that depends entirely on where anybody was standing at a given time and which direction they passed the blade.
Yes.
You're a rubbish policeman, Depp. And then, 2/3 of the way through the film, he starts investigating the Masons, but because it's convenient for the plot, not because there's actually any evidence that's led up to that at that point. And then, Ian Holmes' character's motivation is incredibly weak, even for a crazy.
Yes.
It's just stupid. And because, I mean, that's the whole Jack the Ripper thing really captivated people, still does. Even though the number of deaths associated with this person or persons isn't actually all that high, certainly compared to other serial killers, but really captivated the imagination. It's persisted for 120 odd years or something now.
Yeah.
And because there were the hints that it was somebody associated with the royal family, or like in the upper levels of society. Can't get enough quote marks around upper there, but there's a really interesting idea in that. You could actually do something interesting with that. And this film completely fails to do that.
Yeah.
And I've seen worse films, but this is incredibly unremarkable, as you say, in most regards.
Yeah, it just doesn't do all that much of interest. It's all right, but why dig it out at this point? I just hadn't seen it. I thought I would quite like it on some level, and I kind of don't. So yeah. Not the one to bother yourself with.
I remember not liking it quite a lot when I saw it the first time, and this time I was more just a bit of crap.
Yes.
Next.